Hello, this is Shakar, and I hope you guys have been enjoying your lessons at the Academy. I've just completed a year at Rachel's English, and I thought I should do a video summing up all the stuff that I've learned here so far. So I'm going to try to condense the entire accent acquisition process to give you an outline of what you can expect from the training. If I could go back in time, back to when I was just starting off with American English, this is what I would teach myself to give me a better head start. Now, I'm not posing as an expert here. I'm only sharing what has worked the best for me. And I think the best way to make sense of what you learn is to put it in your own words and explain it. And that's what I'm doing here. So, right off the bat, I'd like to present this model that I've been using in my training for quite some time. It has 7 components, and the first one is shown here, and the rest will be added as I go along. So the first component is placement. Placement is the foundation of our voice. The issue of placement has always been discussed in our academy, but I'm not sure if this term has been properly defined. I would define placement as that resonating space in our vocal tract that sustains the core vibration of our voice. So even if you're going on a higher pitch, the main resonance stays somewhere here, between the chest and the base of the throat. So placement defines the quality of your voice. If you can identify the sounds you make when you laugh or cough, that is usually where your ideal placement could be. Placement is also affected by your breathing posture. So if you slouch forward or if there's any abdominal tension, you might not sound your best. Your voice will be affected. So make sure you have a proper breathing posture and there's no tension in your abdominal region. So your breath is converted into sound when it passes through your vibrating vocal folds, and those sounds are converted into speech using your articulators, namely your lips, tongue, and jaw. So that's what speech is the modulation of voiced breath. So the second component is the agility of our articulators. So I wasn't sure if this point was really important, and I was thinking of skipping it, but then I decided not to, and you'll soon understand why. Every language has its own unique set of phonetic building blocks called phonemes, and these phonemes are created by your articulators. Phonemes are even shorter than syllables, and whenever you learn a second language, your articulators are still hardwired to make the sounds of your first language. So whenever you try to make the new sounds of American, L or R, the reason why you're having difficulties making those sounds is because your articulators are not used to making those sounds. While practicing, you may notice that you're not able to make a particular sound, that you're not able to hold your tongue in a particular position, and therefore not being able to accurately produce those sounds. Now this is because your articulators are still not in the habit of producing those muscular movements that is necessary to make those sounds. So with enough practice, you will be able to reinforce that muscle memory associated with the new sounds that you're trying to acquire. There are plenty of exercises for articulators that you can look up on the internet. Now we come to the third component, which is pronunciation. This is the actual speaking part. So we need to understand what speaking really is. I've been giving this point a serious thought, and I went over a few books on the subject to understand how the brain actually acquires language. Physiologically speaking, the motor neurons that control your hearing centers and your vocal organs are strongly connected. That means your ears control your mouth. And this is also true for your eyes and hands. That means your eyes control your hands. Now the reason why I'm sharing this fact is to stress the point that your ability to read and write and your ability to speak and listen are handled by different faculties of the brain, which means that you acquire the ability to speak and listen using your ears, and you learn to read and write using your eyes. This is exactly why some people learn better by reading and others by listening. So as learners, we have readers and listeners. Now if you really think about it, the act of speaking is really the act of replicating what you hear. That's how language functions. There's always an input before there's an output. You learn to listen before you learn to speak. You learn to read before you learn to write. So, hearing, or to put it more accurately, listening, plays a greater role in speaking than we might realize. Listening is the ability to identify sounds or syllables accurately, and this process is not so simple as it seems. If you identify the sounds of American English using the phonemes of a different language, you're likely to make errors in pronunciation. You need the right set of phonemes to recognize the sounds of American English. And that is why we learn the vowels and consonants in the IPA format. The IPA is like a crutch to be dropped off as soon as we're making the right sound. You don't want to be thinking about the IPA when you're speaking. Success in acquiring a language is entirely dependent on two processes: accurately identifying the syllables and replicating those syllables. Identification and replication. What you hear is what you speak. Now, once you have assimilated all the building blocks, the phonemes of American English, your listening skill will improve enormously. However, your ability to produce those sounds will depend on the kind of practice you've had. Now, this is exactly why those imitation exercises are so useful in building that ear-to-mouth connection. So, in these imitation exercises, you're forming a strong association between the physical sensation of your vocal organs and your auditory input. Once this forms a successful loop, it almost becomes like a reflex action. And now we're on the fourth component, which is stress. English is a stress time language, so it's important to know when and how to apply stress to a syllable. In a stress time language, the length of syllables vary. They are not identical. When we apply stress to a syllable, we make it longer, louder, and we put it on a higher pitch. Stress aids pronunciation and provides emphasis. You'll have a much easier time applying stress if you have a high syllable awareness. With a high syllable awareness, you're able to distinguish the syllables that make up a word. When you can recognize the stress pattern in your words and sentences, you'll have a good control over the rhythm of your speech. Now we are on the fifth component, linking. Linking is what makes connected speech possible. When we speak, we don't just utter sounds, we convey meaning. A group of words will only make sense if they are a part of a phrase or a clause. Linking can be consonant to vowel, vowel to vowel, consonant to consonant, and vowel to consonant. It's really helpful to practice linking at a slow pace. So currently I've been working on my stress and linking. Once you get your linking right, you'll have your speech smooth and connected. Now the next component is reduction. Reduction plays a key role in creating the contrast between stressed and unstressed syllables of a sentence. If the stressed words form the peaks of a sentence, then reduced words form the valleys. They are the de-emphasized segments of speech that allows you to highlight the content words. Reduction is only effective when your words are linked, so it's better to practice linking before you move on with reduction. So we now are at the final component, which is intonation. Intonation is that key factor which imparts melody and emotions to your speech. Now, before we understand intonation, it's important to know what pitch is. Pitch is the highness or lowness of your voice, and I speak high or low not in terms of volume, but what part of your vocal apparatus resonates. There are three sections in your vocal apparatus: your nasal, your throat, and your chest. So the highness or lowness of your pitch depends on which part of these sections resonate. So in simple terms, intonation is the pitch variation that you apply in your speech. It plays a more nuanced role in American English. It's something that is often overlooked, but it contributes a lot to making your speech sound natural. So, in short, intonation brings your dialogues to life. It connects your listeners to your message. It generates interest. It prevents you from sounding dull and boring. So, in this video, I have condensed everything I've learned about accent acquisition into this neat model, where everything is set up in a particular order. The lower half of this model deals with word formation, and the upper half deals with connected speech. This model can be useful in seeing how your current practice fits into the bigger picture. The end game of our training is to automatize the generic fatal patterns that occur in common speech. And this enables us to speak spontaneously without having to worry about the mechanics of speech formation. So that concludes my video, and I hope you found some of this stuff useful. If you would like to exchange tips, discuss some points, or practice together, then feel free to get in touch with me on Messenger. I already have a few people I've connected with, and it would be nice to practice in group. So thanks for watching this video. If you have some useful inputs, please let me know.